The unwritten rules of Facebook.
It cut all of our ad costs by over 70%.
How do you want to be able to take in all of this data that's around us?
Some of these campaigns have done up to $20 million in sales.
I think this is going to be the future for the next 10 years.
And now here is The Win with your hostess, serial entrepreneur, marketeer, and chief sexy boss, Heather Havenwood.
Look, our whole world revolves around our iPhone, iPad, Droid. You know they say we look at our phones on average 150 times a day? And if you're a small business and want to actually grow, you need to reach people where they're looking at and listening the most, their smartphones. See, marketing via text messaging is a great way to start, and it's super easy. Just text the word START to 72,000 to learn more about my friends at Mobit. They're marketing experts, and they will show you how to use text messaging for your business and to get more leads and convert them amazingly. Again, text the word START to 72,000. Again, that's text the word START, S-T-A-R-T, to 72,000. Hi everyone, welcome to The Win with Heather Havenwood, where we help you make more money and have fun in life. So today I have someone really awesome on the line. Actually, it's the person that got me into this crazy thing called podcasting. Jessica, are you there?
I am there. I'm here.
You're here. I'm there. Awesome. You know, I really love that I'm interviewing you because you're the one that got me started on this whole journey of podcasting, and I hired your company, and we all went off the races, right? So I want to tell everybody who you are. If they don't know already, I can't imagine they don't, but just in case, Jessica Rhodes is the founder and CEO of Interview Connections, the premier source for booking outstanding, amazing guests like me. Jessica is the host of the hit weekly web TV show Interview Connections TV, and she's the host of the Rhodes to Success podcast, which I was on. Go check it out. And she's the co-host of the Podcast Producers, an audio series selected by Apple. Hello, that's great. On how to podcast show and basically how to do a podcast show on iTunes. And Jessica's a regular speaker at Dream Business Academy, and I share the stage with dozens of top producers at Podcast Movement and Podcast New England. Of course, she's married with a beautiful two babies, Nathan and Lucy, baby Lucy. I just love that. And that's why we're doing this so early, because she has kids, and it's really early.
Yeah. Well,
you're
you're in Central Time Zone, so it's 9:30 for me. So it's a little earlier for you.
It
so
is.
Thank you
You're welcome.
for doing it now. I like to say, when you were saying how I got you into podcasting, I thought maybe I should brand myself as the podcast gateway drug, because my clients start as a guest expert, and then they're all like, I have to start a podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I mean, just so people understand, is that last year, August 2015, I basically said, hey, you reach out to me. One of your people reached out to me, and I said, yeah, let's do this. I want to be this guest thing. And then I went off the races. I did 100 in 6 months.
Yeah, you killed it.
I did kill it. It was a lot of fun. So I still do it. And then they all tagged me on the shoulder and they're like, why don't y'all start your own thing? I'm like, oh my God. Okay, so here we are. And then I get to interview you. It's like interview my boss. Like, I get to interview my boss. So I felt like I'm interviewing my boss today. I haven't had a boss in years, but that's fun. So let's talk about you, because it's about you today. I mean, God, we could go in so many directions. We were just talking about something that's really important, and I want to bring it up if we're okay with that. So I've been focused on podcasts for a year, but I just recently picked up the phone and said, hey, I'm ready to go to maybe another medium, right? Podcasting's a medium. Let's go possibly to TV. And I picked up the phone and had a conversation with a publicist. And then we were talking about publicists, like what they need to know about podcasting. Because when I talked to her that I'm podcasting, she didn't give me this that's really good. She had this oh, well, it's podcasting, and I'm like, do you really get how powerful that is? So tell us about, podcasting and publicists and
I think this is a really, really great topic, because a lot of us entrepreneurs and marketers and authors and everything, a lot of us are talking to publicists about how to get exposure and grow our business and sell more books. And what I see a lot as a podcast interview booker is that, I'm starting to get called by publicists and traditional PR people that are saying, hey, can you help get my clients on interviews for podcasts? And there's just a couple of things that a lot of publicists don't understand about podcasting. And so I wrote a blog post, what publicists need to know about podcast interviews, because there are some key differences. And the story I was just getting into telling you, Heather, and then I said, we got to start the interview so everyone can hear this, is I had a client who, he just started doing podcast interviews as a guest expert. And one of the feedback that I got about his interview was that, it was good, but his answers were pretty short. And that can be really hard on an interview because these podcasts are, usually 30 minutes at the shortest. And if you give really short answers, then the host needs about 25 questions to get through the entire interview. And ideally, there's only about 3 or 4 questions, and then the rest is that back and forth conversation. And my client's publisher had advised him to give short answers. And I said, that's good for, traditional like media when it comes to if you're getting interviewed for a print article or the radio or the news, because those tend to be 10 or 15 minute spots, a lot of times a lot less, or maybe they're edited down. So those short soundbite answers are what they want. But a podcast interview is so much more conversational, and there has to be more. And the funny thing was, I was interviewed on a podcast earlier this week, and the host has a background in radio. He's actually he consults program directors in Canada. So I'm drawing a blank on like if it's CTV or whatever, like the NPR of Canada is, or something.
The NPR of Canada, there it is.
And so he consults, so he is like a really big deal in Canadian radio, and he has recently started a podcast, and I could sense from his interview style, like it's much more, I could tell he has a radio background, because he said like, what makes a good guest? And I was like, oh, okay, like let me figure out like, I'm like, I could talk for hours on this. How do I give this answer concisely? So it was a challenge for me, but I could just tell that there are different styles. There are different interview styles between radio and TV and podcasting.
Oh, yeah. I think podcasting is definitely more of a conversation. Like you're hanging out with us. We're having coffee. And you're listening. Like you have the privilege listening between Jessica and Heather. I mean, that's kind of more I think, of podcasting. Storytelling. It's more like late night. Like late night, it's like, hey, come on out, Jessica. It's just hanging out with you and having fun. I mean, I think that's more of the medium if you have to put one out there. Because I definitely did a NBC. I finally got my showcase, NBC TV, and it's very short. I think I was on there for like a minute and a half. And the program person, the other girl, I guess, she asked the questions really quick. Okay, so I'll tell you back. So you have to like match.
And the funny thing is with those other mediums, like even podcasts for like they call them procasters, if they have a podcast, but they're more like NPR, Gimlet, or like these huge companies where there's maybe 15 people working on one 20-minute episode. They fill this, they're kind of more of like a reporter, and you don't get as much of the host personality in. So if we were in more of a traditional type of interview, Heather, you as the host would probably, be asking questions, but you wouldn't be interjecting as much of your own personality, I think. But that's the great thing about podcasting, is that the listeners are going to get to know the host and the guest kind of equally, and, get to know them by how they converse with each other.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. That's absolutely true. So how do you, as being a guest, and I've been on a lot now, I love the process, but do you go through like a training period or do you try to train your guests? Because I think that here's why, like publicists do that. They're like, if you're going to work with me, I've got to train you like in my way. Like I've already been, because I've been talking to like 3 publicists in New York, of course. And they talk really fast and they're like, I'll train you. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you want to train me, because then I'll like lose me a little bit. So
it's like a fine line, Heather, because we have our clients apply to work with us first. So if somebody is going to apply to work with us, they're probably they probably know that they're at a level where they can, be a good guest. But occasionally people have applied and we say, you know what, you're really not ready. And so I don't want to be in a position where I'm training people, because when you are booking people for interviews and helping them get exposure, the type of people that are putting themselves out there to do that tend to be pretty confident. Sometimes we're working with egos.
No, you're crazy. Are you serious?
Believe it or not, a lot of people don't want to be told, like, you should do this better. Like, everyone thinks that they, have it all together. That being said, I mean, I would be doing my clients a disservice if I wasn't upfront with them about, hey, you should change this, or you should, again, I had to say to my, and it's sometimes it's uncomfortable because I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to make them feel bad. So, but I did say to my client, you were good, but you could make your answers a little bit longer. And then it was interesting. And I'm glad that I said something to him, because then he said, oh, my publisher told me. So it's not that he was a bad guest. It's that he was getting advice that wasn't applicable to podcasting. And so I could say, all right, here's how it works in podcasting. I often find myself having to train my clients on just how podcasting works. Like, we have one client who is a little bit of a stiff board and wants to only be asked the questions on his one sheet. And
oh my God.
You find
Please
we're like,
do not place them on mine. I don't even have a questionnaire. Like, I just go with the conversation.
And we say, you know what, we have the one sheet with potential questions as a guideline and to show hosts potentially what you could talk about. But you've got to be okay going off of that. People, like, podcast hosts, come up with their own questions. It's their show. You are the guest in their house. And so it's been a challenge and a little bit of a struggle saying, like, you were the guest and you don't set the rules here. And like, this medium is really powerful if you're willing to play by the rules of podcasting. But it is not... these are not interviews where you hand a reporter your questions and they just ask you. Like, that's just not how it goes. And I'll tell you the funniest story, because I'm not going to give this person's name, so I think
but it's like
fine,
Barbara Walters.
One of the
it's like Barbara Walters, right? You say they're Barbara Walters. You don't tell Barbara Walters, no, I think you need to ask me this question, Barbara. I mean, you know what I mean?
And no, but he got really thrown off because the host asked him what his favorite ice cream was, and he was like, we didn't even know what to say.
Are you serious?
What's your favorite ice cream?
Oh my gosh. That's not on the question list, sir.
So, and that's the thing. Another thing people need to know about podcast interviews is that even though you're not going to be asked all the questions, like, podcasts help people get to know you personally. So here's this person saying, nobody cares what my favorite ice cream is, but it just helps you loosen up a little bit, and it helps people just kind of get to know you. And I often say to my clients, like, okay, we're going to be getting you on shows where you're spotlighting your expertise, and it is not invaluable. It can be very beneficial to go on a podcast where you're talking about a topic that's totally unrelated. So I'll give you an example. Our client, Diane Gardner, is an accountant, a tax coach. She mostly goes on the finance and business shows. However, part of her personal story is that she adopted her daughter when her daughter was 2. And so she's got this whole, that's a whole story there. And so she will go on shows where she talks about her faith, and she talks about being, a mom, an adoptive mom. And so seemingly has nothing to do with tax coaching. But guess what? If a business owner who adopted their daughter needs a tax coach, guess who they're going to feel drawn to? They're going to be like, I can relate to her. She knows my story. So there's a huge benefit in talking about stuff outside of your kind of main business expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes sense. I've gone in crazy different spaces, and people ask me.
You've had a lot of fun, like talking about your bodybuilding competition and
that was a fun
relationships.
One. Yeah, relationship. We had a recent one. They interviewed me and my boyfriend. It was like a love story.
Oh,
yeah. So that was super weird because he is not used to podcasting. Oh, he was super nervous. He was freaking out, and he was like that, like, what are they going to ask me? I'm like, I have no clue. Just a conversation. We're having coffee, and he's all nervous. Like, you could tell, like, he's sweating. Listening. Yeah, it was. It was really adorable. So it just came out recently. They just sent me the email like, it's out. I'm like, your love story's out.
Was it Sean Glenn?
Yes.
Yeah, Jamie and I were on that too.
Oh my gosh, it was super.
Yep.
Did y'all do it together? Like,
yeah. I had them on together, and it was so funny because we like share a Google Calendar so we can see where we are, and I had put it on the calendar that we were doing a podcast together, and he thought it was just me, so he scheduled another call. I'm like, no, you were on that with me. He's like, what?
Yeah, see, that's what he's like. What do you mean? And because my boyfriend's a doctor, so during the week there's just no time, right? So we had, because a client, so we had to do it on a Saturday. So imagine it's like a Saturday at 2:00. So Sean was really great about like doing that. I appreciate it. And we're sitting there, and we had to get back from something to do this podcast, and he's like sweating, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna put it all together, and I didn't know how to put it together. I'm like, how am I gonna do this? And or the kitchen table with the Yeti and the computer, and he's just like, his eyes are bulging out. Like, I don't know what am I supposed to say? I'm like, just talk. Like, you talk all day, like just talk.
Just talk normally, because that's what the listeners just want to hear, a normal conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think it's hilarious, but his eyes just pop out of his head like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. It's like, it's a podcast.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, it's okay, relax, chill. But it's a lot of fun. I have a question for you though.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I never asked you this. I was like, all the time I've talked to you, I've asked you this. Ta-da. What's your favorite ice cream? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Mint chocolate for me. So how did you get involved in podcasting? You take it on. I mean, there's just no, you're the master, you're the chief sexy boss of, you're the diva of, like, you are the diva of podcasting.
Yeah.
And how did you start? Like, where did this all
Well, it started, I started my business. I got into having a virtual business because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. When I was pregnant with Nathan, I was working at my full-time job, and I said, as soon as I went public with my pregnancy, and, I told my boss, I said, yeah, I'm going to be leaving my job. I'm not going to be coming back after maternity leave. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. And I had no idea how,
he's like,
because we needed more than one kid income. Like, I didn't have a plan, but I'm like, I'll figure it out. Like, that's always have been, I'm like, I'll figure it out. It'll all work out. And so I said, yeah, it'll all work out. And I just started thinking, I had friends, like one of my friends, Anne, she's in the restaurant industry. She goes, oh, you could come work at the restaurant in the evenings. So I'm like, oh, whatever. I'll just figure it out. And my dad, who, is a business coach, and he said, why don't you become a virtual assistant? And I had no idea what that was. I didn't even, I barely knew what my dad did. I mean, he's had his business for over, 12 or 13 years. But I knew he did something with newsletters, and he had silly videos. That was kind of all I knew. And he told me all about how virtual assistants, they're their own boss. They have businesses where they have, clients, and I said, all right, well, it sounds good. If I can work from home, I guess it was a little bit of a, an ego check. I had to kind of be okay with feeling like I was starting at the bottom of a new career ladder, because my previous job, I had worked there for 6 years, and I had moved up the ranks. And I before I, started having kids, I was like, oh, I'm going to work up to the national staff, and then all that changed, and I'm like, virtual assistant, anything with the assistant in the title, I'm like, I don't want to be someone's assistant.
Right. It's like, I don't want to be their little one.
Yeah. But I said, all right, if this is going to allow me to have an income from home, my dad said, hey, I'll be your first client. So I'm like, all right, well, first it was I'll just work for my dad. And, so I just started doing whatever basically he told me. His personal assistant, Kate, who's worked for him for 6 or 7 years, she would just say, hey, Jess, go through and check the links on this site, or, compile all of his videos and organize them. So I was just doing really mundane work, and it was fine because it was some extra money. And then when Nathan was born, took 2 weeks without working, and then just opened my laptop and started doing some more work. And my dad had said, why don't you start getting me booked for podcast interviews? I will sometimes go on internet radio shows and podcasts, and it's always been a great way for me to, build my following and just, great marketing. So I said, okay, that sounds cool. And I just kind of, went to Google and business podcasts, marketing podcasts. I would find the host contact information and email them. And I say, I have your next great guest, Jim Plummer. He's this amazing business expert. And I just started pitching him, and people started saying yes. And I remember the first show that I got him booked on, I was so excited. I got the email, I would love to have Jim on my show. And I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, I got you booked for an interview. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I was like, this is so cool. So
I could see that. That's really cool.
I was so excited. And and so then I just kept going. I kept pitching him, and that was going well. And then he's selling some books. So he started telling some of his friends, other business owners and entrepreneurs. Charlie McDermott was one of his friends and so then Charlie hired me, and I was getting him on some shows, and just kept going. And then I was at a point, it was like 3 months. Nathan was about 3 months old. And I'm like, I need to make more money, and there's only so many hours in the day. So I either need to charge more per hour or change the way my business runs, because, it's like when you're by the hour, you either raise your rate or you work more hours. That's kind of all there is.
That's how it works, right?
Yeah. And so I said, I got to get out of this by the hour work, because it's just not helping me. I don't have enough hours in the day to work where I can make more money with this model. So that summer, the summer of 2013, my dad helped me come up with the idea for interviewconnections.com. And they said, there's got to be a flat rate, because if there's just a flat rate for all the bookings, if I get them done, it just helps be more profitable. And then I could start to hire team members and, scale the business by having people work for me. And so it's just been a great journey. And I was behind the scenes booking guests for over a year before I kind of came out and started marketing myself as this, podcast expert. So it's been really, really fun. And now I'm totally addicted to podcasting. For so long, I'm behind the scenes doing bookings. And now I have 3 podcasts. I have a weekly video show, and try to do as much marketing as I can.
So first off, a couple things. First, it's really awesome that your dad did that. Instead of saying, come work for me, he spun it and you should start as a virtual assistant, because he knew if he reframed it that way, it's eventually you could take on more clients because it's your business. So brilliant. Jim's amazing. He's so awesome. He's a great guy. And and then I love the fact that you did, for me as a client, I'm a client, full disclosure, is that it is a flat fee, and it's very consistent. And it's just, it's just in my budget, just keep going. And I just love that about it versus $3,000 and we're going to train you and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I like it better because I learned how to be a guest first. And I highly suggest everyone to be a guest first before
we've written. I have a blog post that says, because a lot of people have asked that. And for a while I'm like, well, do both. But now I say, actually, if you can just, be a guest for a while, because you start to build connections, and then when you start a podcast, you instantly have all these people that you can call and say, hey, I was a guest on your show. I'd love to interview you on my show, which is another great thing to do, because it helps you strengthen your relationship with the host. And they and they're like, oh yeah, I interviewed you 6 months ago. Oh, and then they share your episode some more.
That's so true. But at the same time, I learned the business of it.
Yeah.
I would learn the business through other people. You have a show, and now afterwards you get to what I call green room chat. So it's tell me what you do. Do you use, and then you get all the dirty stuff.
I'm going to steal that from you, because I never call it green room chat.
It's okay. You can have it. It is the green room chat. I've learned
a great
more
idea. I've heard other people say that, when we were talking in the green room, and it's so funny because obviously you're not in a real green room because you're on Skype most likely, but that is, I've always said the few minutes before and after the recording.
No, it's the green room. You got to have the green room because it's if you're a Fox News, you're in the green room. It's so more sexy if there's this shh. It's in the green room.
Great idea. Does that mean I can send you my writer ahead of time?
Okay. Oh my God, you're doing a whole book series, the green room chat. It is about that. I learned the art of the what they do, how they're doing it. Tell me more, how long. I would ask them 1,000 questions about their podcast. Yeah, I did about 100 guests before I said, okay, I feel I am ready to flip the coin versus going out and buying some course for $2,000, which I'm not saying you don't have. Whatever. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I did the other way. I did real world, hey, what are you really doing? What's really working?
I just talked to someone. I'm actually going to be on this person's show this afternoon, and he was telling me last week when we were talking that he was a guest on John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneur on Fire podcast. And he's like, just by going through the whole system, he's like, I saw his schedule once. I saw how he does his confirmation on these because I just kind of took all that. It's like, there's his course.
There's his course.
And you know, when you're on a lot of shows, you can see how a lot of different hosts do it. You can see how different show hosts, like some people will send you a really, really long email with like tons of links and tons of graphics. And then other hosts will just send a short, like, here it is, here's the link. You know, I was on duct tape marketing and that just went live this week. And John's assistant sent me an email. I was like, oh, here's the link. P.S. If you're sending out an email to your list this week, this would make a great P.S. line. I was like, yes, it would.
That was awesome. Yeah.
So, like the way awesome. Different people, you know, seeing how different hosts communicate with their guests. You can learn a lot. Say, oh, I like that. Or, no, I don't really like the way they do that.
Right. Like the questions, that was a big one for me.
Yeah.
Should I do the questions or not?
Yeah, that's so, I mean, I'm all about not. And it's funny because I'm very much like you. Like my show is very conversational, and to be fully transparent, I don't spend a lot of time preparing for my interviews. Like 10 minutes before, 10 or 15 minutes before the recording, I'm like, all right, who am I interviewing? And I come up with like a couple things that I might talk about with them, and that's it. And there were a couple times where, and I'm, you know, for the most part, I've interviewed like my clients and other podcasters. So most people come on my show and they're like ready for anything. But a couple times I had somebody booked and they're like, okay, can we do a pre-interview call? I'm like, nope, don't do that. And they're like, okay, well, can you send me the questions? I'm like, nope, don't prepare questions.
What they do, like, they freak out. Like,
and I'm like, listen, and I've said, I'm like, I don't do pre-interview calls. I don't have time for it, and I don't need to do it. And if you need it, then this isn't a good show for you, because I need people that are ready to rock and are going to be laid back and ready to answer questions. I'm like, I'm not going to ask you anything you don't know the answer to. You just have to be ready to be talk.
Like, what's your favorite ice cream? What is your favorite ice cream? Oh my God! Don't ask me that.
Oh my God, I have no idea.
I have no idea. Choices. No, I completely concur. I've had some people ask me that, like, you know, send me the questions and how long is it going to be?
I don't want you to prepare your answers. I want you to come and just answer, like, just talk. And so I know somebody feels like they need the questions ahead of time. They're not a good guest for my show.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I get that. And I don't mind people asking me questions. Like, I've had somebody, I forgot the guy, it's going blank on me, but his was like, I think, a radio, and his podcast is only 10 minutes long. And it's very, very, very short. I'm talking about, he boom, 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 asks the questions, and then he hangs up on you.
Different style.
And I'm like, oh, okay, did you just hang up on me? Hello. He just like gone, right?
Oh my God.
I don't even know it's active yet. So okay, so here you are, you're a virtual assistant, you're a mom, you have two kids now, beautiful Nathan and Lucy. So what's the future of podcasting? Now, that's like the ice cream question. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the future of podcasting is that the barrier to entry is getting so low. Like, it's getting a lot easier for people to figure out the tech. I mean, there's, you know, just so many more kind of done for you systems, either services or software. I think that the future, you know how with blogging, so many people have like a blog spot where they, you know, it was really common, I think, you know, 10 years ago, and people just started blog spot because they want to blog and they want to journal. It was like the social media before Facebook. Yeah. I think more and more people are going to start a podcast as kind of like social media. And I, you know, my client, my friend Jason Hartman, kind of made this prediction, and I've just been sharing his answer because I think it's a really interesting one. You know, granted, I'm a podcaster, so that's part of the reason, but Jamie and I, my husband, we started a podcast together called The Parenting Rhodes. And, you know, it's totally a hobby. Like, it really isn't connected to my business at all. And while obviously as an entrepreneur, I do think, oh, maybe one day there'll be like a big community and maybe there'll be sponsors, but I'm not doing it to make money at all. It's totally a hobby where he and I are having conversations about things, and we're interviewing like our friends and our family, and, you know, hopefully make it a really entertaining show for other parents to listen to. But the biggest reason we're doing that is as a way to talk to each other and to kind of share what's going on in our lives right now. And it'll be really cool to listen back to, you know, far in the future. So I think more people will start doing that.
So what's the intention of Parenting Rhodes? Is it about something specific?
So it is
the
a
marriage?
podcast for parents who are feeling a little indecisive. And I want to homeschool and Jamie doesn't really want to. And so there's so many factors to consider when you're deciding kind of what school to do for your kids or where, if they're going to go public school or private or charter or homeschool. There's so many different options and there's so many different factors. Like with homeschooling, a lot of people just think it's, the stay-at-home mom in a schoolroom in their house, but there's like unschooling, there's co-ops, and there's so many different ways to do it. So with this podcast where, and we only have 2 episodes out so far. The first episode, we just talked about what is the purpose of school? Like, is the purpose of school to socialize your kids, or is the purpose of school to actually learn facts, or is it to prepare them for life? And so we're making this podcast right now talking about just helping us make an educated decision around, will we homeschool? Will we not homeschool? Will we do something in between? Like, will we do, will they go to public school? And then maybe we'll like supplement with home, being just very teachable parents. Yeah. So that's the purpose. Help us figure it out.
Okay. So basically, if your husband was on the line, I would say, so Jamie, this is public counseling for you too. Is that?
Yeah. Because we would have conversations together, like not on a podcast. And we would like, he's a lawyer and I am an extroverted podcaster. So we would just kind of get very stubborn and like fight. And I was like, how can you not agree with me? And then he, as a lawyer, would argue all different points.
Oh my gosh.
He didn't agree with them. Like he would argue a point and I'm like, what? How do you agree that? He's like, I'm just arguing it like for the sake. I'm like, oh my God. So
So like, let's put that on a podcast. That's entertaining.
Yeah. A, it would be entertaining, but B, it also gives us more of a structured setting and kind of gives them some rules of engagement.
Oh my God. I can't believe, I would love to have a conversation with Jamie. I'm like, so how was it like to work out your stuff on public counseling and podcasting? He'd be like, oh my God. That's really funny. But I have to say one thing. When you said, we asked the question, what's the point of school? My first inclination, if I ever asked my parents that, my mom would probably look at me and go, babysitting?
I know.
Like,
well, that's
so I have to deal with you?
Yeah. David Ralph said to me on when I was on Join Up Dots, he's like, send him to school. It's free childcare.
Exactly.
That's true. Yeah. So
what I think is interesting, the whole point of that is, I grew up in the 80s, 70s, 80s, right? So never back then did our parents talk about, like, are we going to send our kids to school? It was just like, that's just what you do.
It's so different now. Like
right.
and I've talked to other homeschooling parents and you meet a lot of homeschooling parents in business because a lot of it's very entrepreneurial. And it's also very, very religious. So I'm trying to find, like, whenever I see a podcast or a blog about homeschooling, it tends to be like a very, very Christian family, which is, not that I have anything against that, but for us, it's not for religious reasons. So I'm trying to find like secular reasons to homeschool.
Like education. I want them really smart.
Yeah, and like entrepreneurial. My big thing is that in school, we stand, we stand in lines, we sit at our desks, we're quiet, and like everyone's kind of treated, the same. Not that kids shouldn't be treated equally, but you know what I mean? Like some kids are going to excel in one subject, but have a little bit more challenge in another subject. So I like that with homeschooling, kids can kind of, they could be learning, if they're in 4th grade, they could be learning 6th grade math, but maybe still working on like 4th grade history or something like that.
Yeah, right. You can actually move the education towards them versus like at them. Yeah. I get that. And it usually is, up until now, but you can change that. Up until now, it's about the Christianity part,
right,
the religious piece.
Yeah, like God says that your parents should be your teachers. And I'm like, well, maybe, but...
There's also a thing called babysitting and really awesome nannies. Yeah. So okay, great. So what's your intention with that one? I love the fact that you were saying, hey, I'm doing this and it's not for business. I think you're right. Is there like a timeline? You're only going to do it for a year? Is it ongoing? I've heard about
really
some podcasting
just ongoing.
Okay.
Being a business owner and an entrepreneur, I definitely am thinking how we set up a MailChimp account and an email address, just so stuff, if it took off and if the audience grew and we wanted to have business purpose, because I've heard other shows that are, hosted by husband and wife or parents where they totally started as a hobby and then it just turned into something big and they got sponsors and it's this whole business. And so it's not necessarily my goal or my intention, but I did set it up. And so in a way that, there's a website, we're on iTunes, there's an email address, there's an email list, like one person on it. So I'm not really actively marketing it that much, but I do kind of put no, it's one of my friends. My dad's not on it. So I kind of set it up. The attention is really, it's like just the journey is just, having something that we enjoy doing together and, having a place to have a conversation together.
So let's want to ask one question about the other ones. You have one that Apple has said, hey, this is like
the
show.
podcast producers.
But that one is it's what I call it's sectioned, meaning you only did so many sections.
So it is a seasonal show. So season 1 is a 10-episode audio series, and then we did season 2. We did differently. My co-host is Corey Coates, and that was 8 episodes. We did every 2 weeks, and so we just finished season 2, and season 3 will be a whole different. So each season we're kind of just structuring it differently and having a different feel to it and a different theme to it. But the first 10 episodes, season 1, is what I usually recommend people listen to first because there's a story arc to it, and we cover really big topics like monetizing your podcast with advertising, podcast stats, the podcast community. So there's like these big questions. There's a whole episode about having a podcast network because so many people ask, well, should I start a network? Should I be in a network? And that episode has all the answers because we interviewed for this whole season, we interviewed 28 people and they're all very credible experts in podcasting. So it's like a crash course in all things podcasting.
I love that. But it's less on it has probably a technical piece, but it's less on the technical and what they call the business side of it. And the business side is the network and how does this work? And how am I going to monetize this stuff? And what are the numbers on this thing? I mean, once you get past the technical, like that's all I'm like in my head about constantly.
Yeah, and we did one episode on like, do you DIY your podcast or do you outsource it to producers? So there's just a little bit on, the editing, but it's not like what microphone should you use. It's really about the business side and, the art of it, like how the interviews are structured and how so it's really, and it's very entertaining. Corey edited it and produced it in a very fancy way.
In a very fancy way. Well, here's the point I was trying to make to people is that, we have one podcast that's like your business podcast, where it's a success. Yeah. Then you have one that's season 1, season 2. That's really hot. I've seen more of that, as well as pointing out.
Yeah, more people are doing that because and it kind of gives them a little bit of a break because it's hard to keep a podcast going.
It is. It really is.
So if you do it in seasons, you can say, okay, I'm ending season 1, and then you get a little bit of a break. So you're not like quitting the show. You're just giving yourself a scheduled hiatus. Right.
And then you have the other one that's more of just for hobby. And so I find it interesting. It's kind of like little businesses you got going on, right? And I think what's happening, I'm asking you, is it's more in the business side of it, like TV. They are going to seasons because there are shows out there that are ongoing forever, right?
Right,
and
like Law and Order.
Yeah, like Law and Order. Like I've seen every one. Or there's seasons to like what I'm watching right now, Animal Kingdoms, because I think it's really hot. It's in like the pre-season 1 kind of thing. So are you seeing that's kind of have the same trend as TV potentially?
Yeah, I see more and more podcasters, and I think this is really smart, with a podcast is like, look at what TV and radio's done, and it's a different medium like we talked about before, so you don't want to just copy the way they do it, but I mean, with the podcast producers with season 1, we dropped all 10 episodes, we just launched the whole 10 episodes on one day. And we kind of,
it's a Netflix model.
Yeah, like the Netflix and Amazon Prime, like they just drop an entire season on one day, and then you have to wait like a year before the next season. And that's what we did here. We dropped season 1, and then a year later we started season 2. So you can I think I encourage podcasters to get creative. Like you don't have to do, a weekly 30-minute show. I mean, I do that, and I think you do that. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's okay to think outside the box and do things a little bit differently from the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I'm actually thinking about it in my head. What can I do? Season 1, season 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Different. And then
or series. Like Natalie at BizChicks, she does series. So it's typically every week, but she'll do like right now she's in this small biz reality series, and she's doing on-air coaching. So she's actually having her clients on the podcast with her, and she's basically just just airing her coaching calls. And that's just a really, really interesting structure. And then she weaves in some, like one of the episodes, she had somebody come on and coach her. So there's so many different things you can do to just be creative with your show.
Versus just one kind of show, like right now I'm doing. Yeah, so that's really cool. I love that. I'm actually thinking about it in my head, series, different things, just like TV. I mean, think about it. Yeah, you don't want to completely follow TV, but at the end of the day, TV has had decades of research, decades of research, and they know how people are. They know the behavior patterns of what people want. So why not pull off their research? I mean, that's how I look at it.
Exactly. I mean, I often listen to radio and TV just as a student of communications and broadcasting.
Oh, yeah. I listen to Rush Limbaugh now because of that. Like, I listen to how he structures things, the flow. The fact is that this is one I haven't done yet, but just me talking for 20, 30 minutes, I don't know if I could do it. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know.
I just started doing it, and it's kind of like riding a bike. You'll fall off the first couple times, and then you just go, because I started doing solo episodes with my show. I'm kind of taking a break from interviews, and so I kind of like write my notes, and each time I get through 7 minutes and I press pause, I'm like, I feel like I said everything. And so you kind of get used to, like, at first you feel like you're just talking to yourself, and then you feel like more natural after a while, because it's just you and a microphone. So it's really fun. I've been having a ball with the solo episodes, but it just takes like a couple times to get used to just talking to yourself.
I'm glad we're having this conversation, because that's one thing I know Rush does. He's really hardcore on that. Really, he doesn't do interviews. Really, it's very rare. And then Fridays he does like callers. But pretty much 4 days a week, that guy is talking to himself. You know what I mean? And
you know what you can do, Heather, what I've done to help me through the full 30-minute episodes is I'll weave in and I'll edit in some extra audio. So for my 100th episode this week, it was a solo episode. But I said, and I like played a clip of, what my show sounded like on episode 1. And I played a clip of what my video sounded like, last week. So you can kind of splice in and edit in some audio from other things that you've done. Like, here a clip of my first video on YouTube. Hear how different it sounds, and then play that clip. So it kind of adds in some different dimensions, and it's not just one long audio file.
Right. Just you talking to yourself. No, I'm glad you said this. This is something, as a podcaster, it's very new for me. I mean, it's real. I did my first solo, and it was my birthday, right? So I did it, but it lasted about 10 minutes. I mean, because I'm like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Like, I feel like I'm just rambling on for no reason and not talking to anybody, because I feed off of people. Yeah. I know that about myself. That's why years of seminars, like, I get me in a room, I'll feed off you. Are
you an extrovert?
No, I'm an introvert.
Really?
Yeah. No. Well, I've had the test a couple times, and I'm like on a line. I go fall.
Oh, wow. I'm so extroverted. Like, I'm in an office all day by myself. Like, I'm so tired at the end of the day. But if I'm on calls all day, I'm like, I'm jazzed, because I need to be talking.
Really? Yeah, you're definitely extrovert. I'm the opposite. I'm the introvert / extrovert. I go in and out. Yeah. Because I'm by myself all day too. But if I'm on calls all day, I'm exhausted.
Oh my gosh, that's weird for me.
But I don't like it when I'm completely by myself. So it's kind of, that's interesting. Yeah, the Myers-Briggs, you gotta love it. Yeah, I'm an introvert, extrovert. So this has been so amazing. We're already at 40 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. So people are like, okay, I love you. You're awesome. How do I become a guest? Or how does this work? Or how can I find you?
So I want to just direct people to my home base, jessicarhodes.biz. So my last name is Rhodes, jessicarhodes.biz. And that has my blog, videos, podcasts, link to Interview Connections. So basically that's a good place to go and just kind of dive into the content that I have.
Perfect. Okay, so everyone go to Jessica Rhodes. Now that is RODES.biz.
RHODES.
Oh my gosh, I messed it up. I'm so sorry. RHODES.biz. Yeah, she's amazing. I really love working with your team. I just love the whole process. You guys have opened this whole new world for me. And I love the medium, because honestly, I love having coffee and sitting here talking. I don't have to get in my car. I don't have to go to the airport. I don't have to pack. I mean, it's awesome.
This is so much fun, Heather. I always love talking to you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Go check out jessicarhodes.biz, and we'll see you the next time of The Win.
Thank you for listening to The Win with Heather Havenwood. Interested in coaching with Heather? Go to heatherhavenwood.com and sign up for a business discovery consultation. Here is your free gift for listening. Get 3 audio chapters of Heather's book, Sexy Boss, How Women Empowerment is Changing the Rulebook, when you text the word sexy to 72000. Again, text the word sexy, that is SEXY, to 72000, and receive your 3 audiobook chapters. Number is good only in North America. For outside the USA, text sexy to +1 323 457 2288. Text sexy to +1 323 457 2288. Long distance charges may apply. Heather wants to hear from you. Questions you want answered on the show. Comments, interview requests. Email media@sexybossinc.com or leave a private voicemail. 51 Boss is me. Again, the number is 512-677-4763. Check out all of Heather's sites. heatherhavenwood.com, sexybossinc.com, e2lab.com, datingtriggers.com. This is a Sexy Boss Wrap. This podcast is a copyright of Havenwood Worldwide, LLC.